In this video, we're going to dive into the unique way that Sean McVay uses motions to create formations and how those motions layer on top of each other to keep a defense on their heels. Let's dive in. So this is the Rams and Bills' recent fantastic regular season game, and we're starting here in one of McVay's favorite formations. This is South Close. What South is, we have a weak side stack with the X on the ball, the F off the ball and outside, Y is attached to the strength, and then Close puts the Z here, that's Puka, in a 5-yard split. This may be South Book instead of Close, he's right inside the numbers, but that's a nuance that's not really what we're getting into here. And this is one of McVay's favorite formations. And this formation has what I consider to kind of be like a base motion, in that they're going to get to this formation, they're going to line up this way, and then very often what we'll see here is now Cooper Kupp has gone into, they call it short motion, this is F short, and what we essentially have here is a 12 personnel formation with a double 5-yard split for the two outside of the core receivers. We have a 3-man surface to the left, a 3-man surface to the right, and then a single receiver 5 yards outside of the core on each side. So automatically the defense has just gone from, now we only have to worry about 11 personnel and that package, to now a 12 personnel package, potentially not as much quite with the Rams as you might see in other teams, but kind of a 2-back run game here with the F off the ball. The Rams don't run a ton of counter, but this would definitely be something that some other teams would do. But now that we have an off-ball blocker in the core, 2-back run game is something we have to worry about. Split zone, counter, etc. But it doesn't always just stop there. And we'll see on this play here, we've got Kupp in the core now, and now Puka is going to motion across. So remember how we broke the huddle. We have 11 personnel, passing strength is to the right, we've got a twin stack and a relatively condensed formation. Then now we go to, okay, we have a 12 personnel formation idea, potential 2-back run game, and then now we have jet motion across. We have trips we have to defend because we've got 3 receivers. We also have the on the motion snap of the number 3 receiver becoming number 1, and within a short amount of time, that is a lot for a defense to process. A little bit later on in the game here, we're in the second quarter. They would call this bunch tight on, bunch because the F Cooper Kupp is in the middle, on because the Y is on and it's a formation he's traditionally not on. Tight, we have our tight receiver, our tight X down at the bottom of the screen. Watch what's going to happen here. We're going to get fax motion, F across. Look where he's ended up. This is the exact same presentation that they motioned to on the last play that we looked at. Instead of Kupp starting here in this stack outside of the X and motioning into this weak side wing position, he simply started over here in the strength to force a bunch check, and we're motioning to the exact same place, creating a formation with motion after a different presentation. And while it most definitely could stop there, again, we're going to get Puka on this motion to, again, the same look. We went from, this time, it's a little bit different. We had a passing strength change. The passing strength went to the offense's left, now the offense is right, but the same idea as when the ball was snapped on that last play. We've got a closed surface to the backside with the Y, then now we have a backside wing and a backside number 3 becoming a number 1. So Sean McVay here has created the exact same look for the 4 primary eligibles as we saw on the play before, with a total different pre-snap presentation, but we got to the same look from a different presentation. 2 plays later here, this would be bundle tight, not bunch, because F and Z, Puka and actually Tutu Atwell here playing the F. They've swapped positions, so different formation, different name, and we're going to see another formation kind of created. We're going to get Z flutter motion here, fly counter, and he's going back to his original spot, and then across now is going to come Tutu Atwell. Definitely a false start miss there, but if we look at this formation here, Puka's a little bit tighter than he was because he's going to be kind of more a wing than in a 5-yard split, but this is very similar to the first formation we looked at, South Close. We have our weak side condensed stack like we had in South, then we have our on the ball tight end and our off the ball Z. A little bit closer, like I said, than he would be in specific South Close, but very similar look as we started out with after motion. So here what Sean McVay has done is a formation that we presented earlier and motioned out of. Now we presented a different formation and motioned to that original formation. Now, not as much at the pro level as I believe would happen in high school, but whenever you get used to seeing all this motion, I think they're up to like 80% of their plays right now, the Rams are, that they're motioning. And whenever you see all that motion as a defense, especially like I said in high school, I think that you can almost kind of start to lull the defense to sleep, like they're expecting to see a motion, and it might be a little bit hard to get ready for a play if you don't see the motion. So here we have that bundle tight on formation here. The Y is on. We've got our basically double wings outside the tight end and a tight split backside receiver. Like I said, maybe this one could be booked too because he looks a little bit tighter than just 5 yards. But now instead of motioning to a formation, we're coming right at the defense. Hopefully we can catch them sleeping, and maybe not quite as much in the NFL as we would in high school, but that's a pretty easy 4-yard gain there, because when the defense can be so used to seeing motion, if they don't see it, maybe it's a little bit harder to kick it into gear right away because you're expecting the motion instead of the snap right away. If you are still tracking athlete development by hand or not at all, the automatic weight training calculator and player information system is for you. Simply enter the data during max week and all the calculations will happen automatically, doing everything from comparing previous max attempts to calculating updated percentages for percentage-based weight training. As a bonus, it includes a prospect sheet that can be shared with recruiters so they always have the most up-to-date data on your players. With options for Excel or Google Sheets, this spreadsheet is for anyone who wants to save time calculating percentages in the weight room. For a full demonstration, click the link in the description below. So beyond just being able to create different formations with motions, let's take a look at the effects that might have on a defense. So here we have, this would be south left close, that same formation that we started with. We've got 5 yards of separation between the stack and the core. We've got 5 yards of separation between the Z and the tight end here on the strong side. So like I said at the beginning of the video, I kind of consider this F short to be a base motion. Like it almost feels automatic whenever this formation is called. But as we kind of saw on that last play, a defense has to account for the possibility that the offense can snap the ball here without a motion. So when we line up, the defense has to be ready for the potential that this could be the alignment that we're going to run the play from. Then we motion in. Now the defense, like we said earlier, has to account for the possibility of a two-back run game. Maybe we're going to run a strong side counter, maybe a weak side split zone. Obviously, with McVay and Stafford, it could be a motion into a pass, maybe to get Cooper Kupp more isolated on a linebacker instead of a DB. But again, the defense has to account for the fact that the ball could be snapped here. And what are the different tendencies when we get to this formation? Then you add the fly motion by Puka Nacua. And something that I think is really interesting about these fly motions is that the defense has to be prepared for the ball to be snapped at any point in this motion. The ball could be snapped here, and we could be turning around and handing it on a jet sweep, or at least presenting the fake of a jet sweep. Maybe the ball is snapped here, and he's going to go add to the core in spirit motion, or escort motion as it's pretty popularly called. Or maybe it's a little farther out, and now he's going to become a new number 1 receiver. So all of those things, the defense has to be ready for the potential of a snap at any of those points. And based on when the ball is snapped, what are the tendencies there? And that is so much for a defense to process, especially when you have to consider, how did we line up? What are our tendencies here? All right, what are our tendencies whenever we motion the first time? Now, what are our tendencies based on when we snap this ball on the fly motion? As you can see throughout, especially these last couple of years since Stafford has been a Ram and the success of the Rams offense, I don't even know that an NFL defense can handle trying to remember all of the tendencies for each of these alignments and motions, in addition to, or at the same time as, all the checks that they have to make based on what coverage, because now we're going from changing the passing strength to how are we going to match any coverage if we get switch releases. What about where the pressure's coming from? Or we have a nickel pressure, but we don't want to pressure nickel against maybe a three receiver set this week. There are so many things that a defense has to process in such a short amount of time that I don't even know, like I said, if an NFL defense can handle it, much less at lower levels. If you want to think about how are we going to not have tendencies, maybe just giving more things for a defense to look at and process can really eliminate the ability for them to remember tendencies as we go throughout the course of a game. So we're in south close. Now maybe instead we have our alignment, and now we're in bundle tight on. Again, you can get to that exact same idea with another motion. We're going to get fax motion here, and now we are in, again, deuce ace, Deuce putting the F in a weak side wing position, and Ace bringing the X and the Z in a 5-yard split, but we're motioning to it. So pre-snap, what a defense has to account for here is, number one, we have a 5-man overload. How are we going to adjust to that? And then also with the understanding that the F and the Z here are Cup and Puka, and they are also some stud blockers, especially as far as receivers go. So these are not just guys that are in here and they're just bodies to add gaps, but we can really overpower them in the run game. This surface is just as effective as you'll see other offenses get in 13 personnel on the goal line, and the Rams can do it here anywhere on the field and present the possibility that you have to fit a run from a 5-man surface before the snap. You also have to have your coverage checks, because essentially you do need a bunch check right here. There's 3 receivers tight together, and even the tight end, he's not a Kelsey level threat, but he can get in the flat and make some catches and get a couple yards that way, or run a hitch, things like that. So the defense has to account for that. We have to be ready for the ball to be snapped here. And then all the same things we looked at earlier. Now we've got fax motion. Does the defense recognize that this is the exact same formation, even though we didn't motion to it the exact same way, but the same formation that we motioned to earlier when we were coming from the stack instead of from the what is essentially a bunch? Then after that, you bring the Z, and now the passing strength has changed. You know, whenever we came at it from the south formation, this would be the passing strength because we have 2 detached wide receivers. But when we're coming from the bunch over here, this is the passing strength. And how does the defense handle the change of strength motion? Are they going to run the nickel all the way across the field because it's jet motion? Are they just going to play it out through the down? Those are all things that the defense has to be aware of pregame. It's something that would be scouted beforehand. But when we go to the idea of one play, many ways, this is a great way to do that. Whenever you can motion to a set from different formations, you can motion to the same set and run a few of the same plays because we didn't present it the exact same way. And when we give the defense so much eye candy that they have to account for and checks that they have to make based on what their call is and how vigilant they have to be that the snap could be at any point, that's a lot for a defense to process, to the point where, especially at lower levels, the high school level, that is so much for a defense to process that you can almost see a defensive mentality of saying, we're going to make our checks and we're not just going to try and jump the snap because we don't know when it could be. So we just need to wait for it to happen so we don't get in trouble with a pre-snap penalty. And if you want to dive into more philosophy or different types of shifts and motions that we can use to leverage defenses, then you can click on the screen and check out this next video.